Good morning, everyone. It's Tony here from Locks to Who, um, and today is my review of my thoughts on Marco Polo. Now, Marco Polo is 7 25 minute episodes, broadcast between the 22nd of February and the 4th of April 1964, directed mostly by Wallace Hussein. I think one episode was directed by John Crockett. It was written by John Lucarotti, who also wrote the. Where is it? Come on. There we go. Who also wrote the novelisation for Target, which was originally published back in 1984, and is based on his original scripts. Um, it's a very enjoyable novelisation, actually. I highly recommend it, because especially as Marco Polo does not exist in the archives. As I said, I'm not. This isn't a blog about missing episodes, but suffice to say, if you don't know anything about it, the BBC used to regularly reuse film, because it was very expensive, and at that time there was no market or even foreseeable market except selling abroad, for the product. And when they were selling abroad, the way I understand it, somebody could probably correct me in the comments below. They used to basically run the original films on a screen and copy and film the screen, to send abroad. Or sometimes they would send the original film. I don't understand the ins and outs of it. Basically, none of those, as far as so far, none of it's ever been found, and it is considered lost forever. Now, luckily, somebody somewhere was recording the whole thing on audio, and so to experience Marco Polo, you can listen to it. They released it originally, I think, on cassette, no, on CDs, but it's now on the Audible, which is where I listen to it, on the Audible uh, missing episodes box, volume one, something like that, with the William Russell narration, to fill in the gaps. Because obviously, if you're doing just audio versions of television, you have to describe what's going on, sometimes. There is already, unusually in the Doctor Who story, a narrator anyway, because Mark Eden, who plays Marco Polo, narrates some of his journeys. There's a map. It's very Indiana Jones, actually. It, the problem is, it's very hard to judge missing stories. The best example, because you can't see what's happening, and which sounds like such an obvious thing to say. There are something called telesnaps, which is again a whole other story. But there was a person or company that would take pictures of. I did the international thing of camera there, but don't worry about that. Who would take pictures of stories as they were being broadcast on television, usually for the actors concerned, so they could keep a record of their performance. So you can build up a reconstruction from the photographs. So you have some idea of the visuals, but not a lot. For example, in I think it's episode 2, there's a massive sandstorm, which sounds incredible on audio, but you have no idea really what it looked like on screen. I believe the director didn't think it was that great, but we don't know, so you can't really judge it. All you can really judge is you can judge it as almost like a radio play. But even then, that's unfair, because as I said, once you're missing the visuals, what do you do? So my it's also, so my view. I like Marco Polo, but I like it because it's historical, and I like historicals. It's based on, obviously, the journals of Marco Polo, who was a 15th century Venetian explorer. Um, I know when I was for a while there was some consideration that he made it all. He made pretty much all of it up, and he didn't do with the journeys that he claims to have done. But I think in recent times, it's come the thing has gone full circle, and people actually now believe he did do what he said he did. Um, I've never read the Journals of Marco Polo. It's on my list, like a lot of books, but I've never actually got around to reading it. Um, so it's loose. It's based on a real historical figure. Historicals. If you look at season one of Doctor Who, as what we now call season one of Doctor Who, you'll see that the stories are basically, if you count Unearthly Child as a historical, which is moot, you can see it goes historical science fiction, historical science fiction, historical science fiction, historical science fiction, whatever, something along those lines anyway. Um, and that's because at this point Doctor Who was sort of had a sort of BBC let's make it vaguely educational purpose to it. Um, so there's that in it. So as a historical, that's one of the reasons I'd love to have it back. Is I just want to see what they did with the costumes and the sets, and you some see a bit of it with the tele snaps, but you that doesn't really do it justice. Um, so it's hard to give a decent review. I enjoy it, but I imagine if you're new to classic Who, or you've watched some classic Who and you decide to do this journey, Marco Polo is going to be your first problem to deal with. And it will all depend on how comfortable you are with listening to. There is a short reconstruction in the beginning box set that cuts the whole story down to like 30 minutes, because obviously it's 7 episodes. It's long as well, and it is too long. But again, most 60 stories that are over 4 episodes could be cut down. And by modern standards, every single episode of classic Doctor Who could probably be cut down. So there's that. So it's hard to say. As I said, I really enjoy it, but it's hard to based on the performances. Mark Eden is Marco Polo. He's excellent. Um, Darren Nesbitt is Tigana. You would probably recognise Darren Nesbitt because he plays Nazi villains or villains in a lot of things. He has that kind of acting pedigree. And Xenia Merton plays Ping Cho. Now, this who is always those three key performances are all excellent. Darren Nesbitt, Tigana is the main. Spoilers. Tigana is the main villain. Actually, it's not spoilers really, because you know that pretty straight off. Tigana is the villain of the story. Ping Cho is a young girl who is travelling to the court of Kublai Khan to be married to a much older man, which is not something we all want. Xenia Merton's appearance is one thing we should say about this story. Problematic by modern standards is that it has a lot of white actors in yellow face. There are no, apart from Xenia Merton, who is Burmese, Anglo-Burmese or Anglo-French Burmese. Almost everybody else in it is either British, white British, or European. I think there's a Hungarian, and there's Tuta Lemkov, if I'm pronouncing that right, who is a face you will know from a million different things, who was Norwegian, I believe, but crops up in a lot of films playing random non-European people. So that goes against it for a modern viewership. But what I would say is, it's most it's hard to just it's impossible to justify by modern standards. It's what was done a lot at the time. I can't you can't do anything about it now, and there is a certain sort of othering of the non European people in this story. with but I think it works as a historical. Um, there needs to be, but how good a story it would be if it was returned to the archive I, is impossible to say. I like to think it would be very good. I'm not sure when and if ever it'll get animated. It's 7 episodes long. It's got a lot of characters in it. It's got a lot of costumes, historical costuming in it. So I imagine it would be an expensive thing um, to animate. I did think that if they were ever going to do a Blu-ray season 1 DVD box set, they would have to animate Marco Polo. Um, the issues around the copyright with The Unearthly Child means that a season 1 box set is a long way down the road. Um, so at some point it might get animated, but at this point it doesn't exist in the archives, only exists on audio. So even allowing for that though, it's a good story. It's a journey story. It is a bit like a long, one of those maps in an Indiana Jones movie. There is a certain element of that, but with things happening at each point. The main plot, spoilers again, is that Marco Polo is traveling to see Kubla Khan, uh, and he is joined by Tigana, is who comes from another court and is allegedly coming for peace talks, but actually wants to kill Kuba Khan. Tigana is so obviously the villain that you're surprised Marco Polo doesn't fall for it. But what I think happens is Marco Polo basically seizes the TARDIS and says he's going to gift it to Kuba Khan, and in the hopes that it'll allow him to go back to home to Venice, Europe, Italy, as will be. And he wants to. And the TARDIS crew are obviously a bit miffed about that. And what happens is they become increasingly devious about how they're trying to get back the TARDIS back, which Chigani uses to get Marco Polo to trust him more than he should do, even in the face of some fairly obvious evidence that Tigana is up to no good. And yeah, it all ends in a sword fight at the Kubla Khan's court. There is a great the one thing that is also good about this in the final episodes is the Kubla Khan. There's some brilliant interaction between Kubla Khan and the Doctor about their age and how old they are when it's demanded that they kowtow to Kubla Khan, and the first Doctor just going, I'm too hot on my back, I can't get down, and there's a whole thing there, and there's some comedy sequences involving those two playing backgammon for prizes, and eventually, obviously, it all ends and they just take off and leave for the next adventure. It is fun. I wish it existed on a thing, but this is the first one where, to a general viewer, to somebody that might, you can't say get involved in this. This is the first difficulty the on the Doctor Who rewatch. There's going to be more of these. This is the earliest one, and this is probably the most painful one, really, because it's the only missing episodes from the whole first season of Doctor Who. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I have a historical interest, so the historicals always appeal to me more than to a lot of people. Can't think of anything more to say without repeating myself over and over again. Worth the listen, but I wouldn't begrudge you if you skipped over it and went straight to the Keys of Marinus. But eventually, you're going to have to if you're doing this project, you're going to have to deal with missing episodes. So there you are, 15 minutes on Marco Polo. Next up is the Keys of Marinus, which will probably be tomorrow, but maybe not, depending on life. I'm not feeling very well at the moment, so that might delay it. Anyway, have a good one. Feel free to subscribe, comment, like. I know only about 3 people are watching these, but welcome to an very exclusive club. hopefully there will be more people as I continue with this. But there you go. Have a good one, and I will speak to you soon. Bye bye.